Good morning. Welcome to Hometown Heroes. This is Rick Irving, and my co-host Mary Staffeld is someplace, but not here today. She has been out of town, and I think her flight was delayed, so she may pop in here, and she may not. Who knows? Today we have a very interesting guest. He's a friend of ours, and his name is Roy Davis, and Roy is a historian. He is an Army veteran and he's a Navy veteran. Navy veteran times two because he was in and then he was not in. He got out, went in civilian life, went back in the Navy, and he's got some very interesting stories. And he also was born in Maine. And I guess that's, Roy, that's where you got your start in history.
Yeah. Good morning, Rick. I appreciate you having me on the show, and good morning to everybody out there, and God bless everybody. Another beautiful day on this great earth. As Rick was saying, yeah, I was born in Portland, Maine, in 1960. Lived there, lived in the city of Portland. And Portland's the largest city in the state of Maine. Population 65,000. Imagine
And
that.
there's a lot of history there in Maine, isn't there?
Yeah. So growing up in Maine, uh, it's quite an old city, incorporated right around I don't know, around the 1650s, 1670s, and the history is all around us. Well, I was telling Rick earlier, um, when I had to do projects in school back in the day, we didn't have to go very far to find history. It's just right out the back door. So yeah, when I was growing up in Portland, and actually I grew up there for about 10 years and then moved across the river, the Fore River, to South Portland, Maine, and went to school there for a while, and lived there for about 7 years, and then moved to down to the next county in York, Maine, which is even more historical. So that was right up my alley.
And you just went on vacation up there and spent several weeks. And I kind of followed you as you were going to all these historic places in Maine. I'm thinking, my goodness, because every day, I mean, it wasn't just one; it was three or four different, very interesting places.
Yeah, when I go to places, my wife's always bugging me. Why I don't have pictures of people? Why didn't you get pictures of your family and you and everybody? And it's like, well, I guess I could. I could do that anytime, but I'm out taking pictures of architecture around my area, forts, lighthouses, you name it. And yeah, while I was on leave, while I say leave, the old military term, but while I was home on vacation, uh, yeah, I went around to all of southern Maine, and even well, this York County is in southern Maine, and I probably went to just about every small town within about 15 to 20 minutes from my home. I was brought up in Lyman, Maine, which is a little inland, probably about, I don't know, 10 minutes from Kennebunk and Kennebunkport, Maine, and so yeah, I don't have very far to go to get to the history, and it was a lot of fun.
And you not only had an interest in history as you were growing up, when did you start collecting? Because you are a great collector. You have your own collection, and then you have a collection for roll call. They have a museum, and you are the curator for the museum, and we even have a mobile museum. So when did you really begin collecting?
So probably about the age of around 10 years old, I started getting interested. I noticed some letters in the house, and each one of them had a different stamp on it. And, being a 10-year-old, I didn't know much about the postal system. Um, it's like, wow, I thought they just used the same stamp for everything. And I started noticing different ones, and it's like, yeah, I want to collect those. So I started clipping them off, and then coins came along, and I noticed that there were different dates for different pennies and nickels. So I wanted to collect one each of those, and I started taping them on a piece of paper, all the things that you're not supposed to do when you're a collector. But yeah, at about 10 years old, I really started getting interested in collecting stuff.
And then you got interested in collecting military memorabilia.
So, yeah, so the military didn't come until later on since I've been in Texas. And I didn't mean to interrupt you there. But I've always been a stamp collector, coin collector, old photos, old documents, and things like that. And later on, as I got involved here with the military, of course, being in the military, I started collecting militaria.
And one thing about Roy is he knows all the medals and ribbons and knows how to research that stuff. Because if I see pictures of some people sometime, and I'll think, I wonder what those ribbons are. And I'll send a picture to Roy, and man, it's just a few minutes. He said, this is this. And oh, by the way, this one shouldn't be where it is. It should be over here, because there's a certain pattern or hierarchy on those medals. But Roy can easily identify most of those medals. So,
yeah. The thing, Rick, with people don't realize this. I think people in the military don't realize this. When they're walking around with their uniform on, that pretty much tells the story of that person. You'll see all these buttons and whistles and medals and ribbons and badges and rank and all this. And most people will walk by and they just think, oh, there's a military guy. But his whole military career is on his uniform. And I always thought that it was real interesting to be able to look at somebody that's in uniform and, oh, yes, this guy did this, or this young lady did that. And I just find it intriguing. And so as I went along all these years, I've kind of memorized a lot of the Air Force. I still have a problem with, but I'm getting better at the Air Force. But yeah, it's really kind of a cool thing to be able to look at ribbons and say, yep, that's it, and that's this, and this is this, and he did that or she did that. And so,
they were in Iraq, or they were in Vietnam, or they were in both, or they were in Korea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there's not just the medal that the individual earns or is awarded. There's also unit citations and campaign citations for being at different places at different times. So.
Yes, yeah, that's what's always intrigued me about military uniform. Some of the younger kids when I was in weren't as interested in things like that as I was, but I tried to explain to them just what I explained to you. And you're the sharper you are in the military, of course, the you're going to make rank and you're going to move up. The more you have, the more you earn, the harder you work. But everything there with the ribbons and medals and badges and unit citations, that's that a man or a woman in uniform, that's their record. Yeah. Without having to pull their 201 file out and look through it. It's all right there, and you can tell. So.
And you started your military journey right out of high school, didn't you?
I did. So when I was growing up, I used to always threaten my mom. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, so I saw her way more than I did my dad. And she was a little more strict than my dad was because she was home all the time. And every time that I did something wrong and she would scold me, I would threaten her, I'm going in the Navy when I get old enough. And it would just kind of go in one ear and out the other. Once I got into my senior year, the recruiters came to the school, the Navy recruiters, and I signed up because I always wanted to go in the Navy. I wanted to be a fireman in the Navy. And I wanted to be a fireman in civilian life, but I never really followed through with that. But yeah, I joined right after high school. I was on the delayed entry program. I signed up in '79. And by golly, when I graduated in 1980, I was gone September 17th, 1980, and went down to Orlando, Florida, to the basic training. That's where our basic training went.
At least you didn't go to Great Lakes Naval Station for basic training. Or you got to go where it was a little bit warmer.
Yeah, I didn't want to be issued a shovel as part of my uniform with my name on it to be shoveling snow. I said, I want to go to Orlando, and I would like that guaranteed along with my job. And by golly, they signed me up, and that's where I went.
Well, on your job, did you did you start as a firefighter, or did you move into something else?
Once I got in the Navy and figured out, could see what kind of jobs or MOSs or specialties that they had. I did not go any type of fire because they really don't have firemen in the Navy. All the firemen on all the bases nowadays, with all the branches, are pretty much civilians. You could have firefighting in the Navy and go to firefighting schools, because you can always run into that situation to where you need to have some firefighting skills. But I originally signed up as, get this, an aviation anti-submarine warfare operator, which is an AW. And for all the Navy people out there, they'll know what an AW is. That's what I originally signed up for. While I was in boot camp, I was not a strong enough swimmer to be able to rescue or save somebody else's life. I was a good swimmer, but just not strong enough, skinny, 150-pound skinny kid. And so that job, they could not guarantee that to me. And I had the choice to get out right then and there, but didn't, stayed in, and I became a weatherman instead, which is called an aerographer mate in the Navy.
And people don't realize how important the weather is, and to have, the weather people, the meteorologists, on board ships so you can know what's coming. I mean, you're out in the middle of the ocean sometime, and you can't just, we didn't even have Google and all that stuff, the Weather Channel. You can't just say, oh, what's going to happen today? You have to have people that are trained, and you had all the equipment and everything whenever you were on a ship to predict the weather and see what was coming and where the dangers were.
Sure. And if you think about June 6, 1944, that was actually delayed. I think they had an earlier date for that, but the weather was a problem. So weather is very, very important in the military, all aspects of the military. It doesn't matter what branch you're in. You got planes in the air, weather's going to be an issue. You got ships on the high seas, weather could be an issue. I became a weatherman after they told me that I couldn't become a warfare operator, submarine warfare operator. I became a weatherman and reported to the USS Carl Vinson CVN 70, which was a brand new Nimitz class carrier. And I was in the pre-commissioning unit. I was sent to the pre-commissioning unit there in Newport News, Virginia, at the shipbuilding facility where all of our carriers are built today. And that's how I got my start in the Navy. And although I didn't become a fireman, the weatherman was quite an interesting job.
How long, whenever you went to the USS Carl Vinson, how long was it before you actually started your deployment on the ship?
Yeah, so right after Orlando, when I went through boot camp, probably about 25 of us all got sent to the same ship. We all got sent to the pre-commissioning unit, Carl Vinson, Newport News, Virginia. We went to Norfolk, Virginia, and we lived in the barracks there, and then they would bus us over to Newport News every day to work on the ship. I reported there in 1981 to the ship. The ship was not completed at that time. It took another year and some few months, probably about a year and 3 months before that ship was completed and ready to go out on deployment. And our very first deployment was down to the Caribbean to do all the sea trials down off of Guantanamo Bay, do all of our sea trials, do all of our testing, land a couple of planes on the flight deck and test the catapults and everything that you need to do before the ship is ready to go out to sea. And one thing I did miss, we commissioned that in 1982. I was a original crew member. March 13th, 1982, we commissioned the Carl Vinson, and then we started all of our sea trials. So I forgot to add that in. So yeah, it was about 1982 is when we first started going out.
And that's pretty interesting to be there at the very beginning, and then to go out and do the sea trials, and then to be able to go on the voyages that you went on after that.
Yeah. When we were in Newport News, now that I think back, well, I was young back then. It's like I was just wanting to get off the ship and go out in town and eat and have a good time with the other sailors. And I never really thought too much about all the aspects and the different stages that we went through before we went on our first deployment. But yeah, when we moved on there, I was on a fire watch a lot of days while guys were welding, while things were being moved around, while things were being hammered and cut, and they even tested the catapults right there on the James River. They had these big orange buggies that were hollow inside. They're huge. I don't even know what the dimensions of these things were, and they would hook them up to our catapults and fling them off into the James River, and then have a helicopter go out there and pick them up and bring them back. And that's how we tested the catapults long before we ever went out to sea. So, yeah, go ahead.
After you did all your sea trials, then you went back up to Norfolk, and then you started your deployment then.
Yeah, so we went down into the Caribbean, down off of Guantanamo Bay, tested the ship, did all the trials that we needed, and went through all the drills so that we could get signed off on everything. We found while we were down there in 1982, there was a strange noise coming from the aft end of the ship, and they found that one of the screws was cracked. So they brought it back up to Newport News and parked it inside dry dock, pumped all the water out of it, and then you've got this carrier sitting with no water underneath it, and replaced the screw. Once we got that done, by the end of 1982, we were ready to go on our first voyage, which was a world deployment. We were scheduled for a world deployment from March of 1983 until October of 83, and we were going to go from Norfolk, Virginia, and go around the world the long way. No canals, none of that kind of stuff. The long way. And our new home port was going to be out in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco.
So you went from the United States, you went across the Atlantic, we went around the Cape?
Yeah, absolutely. We went in. What we did is we went across the Atlantic, went into the Mediterranean, did some exercises and showed off the ship to several dignitaries in that area. Come out of the Mediterranean and then down around the Africa. We visited Morocco, Africa, and we visited Ivory Coast. And once we left the port visit of Ivory Coast, we went across the equator, and we went at 0, 0. So for all you Navy guys out there, I am a shellback. I've been initiated for going across the equator, but I'm called an emerald shellback because when you go across at 0, 0, that's a little special. Most guys in the Navy cross just about anywhere on the globe. But yeah, we were in the Med. We did stop in Monaco, in Italy and France, and then out of the Med, down around Africa, into the Indian Ocean, over to Australia. We went to Hong Kong, Busan, Korea, Sasebo, Japan, the Philippines, stopped in Australia, and then went back out into the Indian Ocean for about another 2 or 3 months, and then off to Hawaii, and then off to San Francisco or Alameda.
So you got to see a lot of the world. I mean, you saw more world than a lot of people that join the Navy see.
Well, I joined the Navy to see the world. Although it always does go through your mind while you're in the Navy, you do miss home, and you kind of think when you first get in that you'd like to get stationed closer to home. But I mean, I went in to get away from home, so it was good for me to get on a carrier, a brand new one. And let me add this: we were the first carrier that was named after a living American. Carl Vinson was a congressman from Georgia, and he was still alive when the keel was laid, when the ship was when they christened it, and he died just before it was commissioned. But it was the first ship named after a living American. So I wanted to throw that in. But yeah, I went in the Navy to see the world, and I saw the world.
And you were pretty excited about it, weren't you?
I was excited. The exciting part was There you go. The exciting part was being up on the flight deck or being in the weather office, because we were in the '06 level of the superstructure. And the exciting part was looking out that porthole window that we had. We had two of them in our weather office, and seeing some lights at a distance, knowing that we were going to be pulling in there pretty soon and being able to spend some of that money that we've been saving up on the ship. So yeah, all the way around. Everything about it was exciting. I couldn't ask for a better first time in the military, first deployment, or it was great.
And then you came on back and went under the Golden Gate Bridge.
We did. They had a big old celebration for us, welcoming us into Alameda. Of course, our ship could not fit under the Golden Gate Bridge, so we had to lower our mast. So we did. The mast was lowered. We were able to get through and off to our new port in Alameda. And yeah, and so and we talked a little bit about me being a weatherman on a ship like a carrier like that. And when you're at flight ops, which could be for days, weather is very, very important. And when you're on a ship, forecasting the weather and anything to do with the weather at all, it changes constantly because you're moving. So you're looking at the weather all around you, and you don't want it to sneak up on you, or you want to move away from it. So it makes it a little bit different than being on a shore base where you're stationary all the time.
Because you have to know the wind direction and the wind speed, because those airplanes depend on certain wind too, don't they?
Right. So if you've got a headwind of say 10 miles or 20 miles per hour or 20 knots, let's say, and your ship is going 20 knots, well, now you got a 40 knot wind coming at you. You have to have certain winds. They have to be blowing a certain way, and so that these airplanes, once they're put on the catapult and slung off the flight deck, which is basically, it's like a slingshot. You have to have the right setup for these airplanes to be able to take off and be able to land. So winds and weather, cloudiness, all of that is very important. And the other big important thing is we did a lot of oceanography, mostly mostly like sea wave heights and swell heights, because some of these guys, every plane that ever takes off from a ship or even a shore base has what they call ditch headings, to where they can figure out if they need to land their airplane in the ocean, which way the swells are going, how big they are, and all that, so they can ditch in. They call them ditch headings, so that they can land safely. Well, I don't know, try to land safely in the water if they need to do so.
And that was a question I had, and you just answered it, about your job also was to determine, the speed of the currents and things like that, and the swells and.
Yeah, when swells, sea wave heights and swell heights and the direction are very important. Another aspect of the oceanography part of being an aerographer mate is bathythermographs, and those are launched over the side of the ship. They were very small back in the day, and we could do seawater temperature and figure out where your inversion layer was. Where the temperature where it would decrease, and then all of a sudden have an increase, a tick up, and then start to decrease again, because the lower you go, the colder it gets. Same with the atmosphere. But we did a lot of that oceanography for submarines that were in our battle group or submarines that were in the area.
And that was before we had all these computers, and the internet and all that. So you really had to do a lot of things manually, didn't you?
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff
and things like that.
A lot of stuff was done on tape back then, where you had these little look like cassette tapes that went in to a computer, and as your bathythermograph was going down into the ocean and recording and sending back, because they had a really thin copper wire that was tied to it. Sounds really kind of archaic today. I'm sure they do. It's totally changed today, but it would send a signal back, and it would be recorded on those tapes. Of the temperature of the sea as this thing went down at different intervals. So yeah, there was a lot of stuff done by hand back then we did have computers, and they were really cool, and really it was something else to be able to work with these computers. But I look back, and like I said, it is so archaic compared to what we have today.
And this is in San Francisco Bay.
Mhm.
And I learned about swells and the danger of the ocean about 80 miles south of San Francisco Bay in Monterey Bay. I was stationed at Fort Ord. I bought a little sailboat, about a 13-foot sailboat, knew nothing about the ocean, but I wanted to sail. And my personal flotation device was a cushion I sat on and not a life jacket.
Yeah.
And so it looked like a beautiful day to sail. So I took my brother, he's about 16 at the time, and I was probably 20, 21, and I was going to take him sailing. Well, we got out in the bay, and I didn't know about the swells. And this little sailboat, we would just go down, and all we'd see was this wall of water. All the wind would come out of our sails, and then we go up, and the wind would hit our sails. And after about 30 minutes, and having seen the Coast Guard rescue other people out there in the bay,
Yeah.
I said, I don't think that we need to sail anymore in the bay. So that was the last time I sailed in the bay.
Well,
It's dangerous.
it is. And that reminds me, when we were off the coast of Australia in 1983, we had visited Fremantle or Perth. We went in there for 8 days because we needed to replenish. A carrier serves 18,000 meals a day. So after a while, you run out of eggs and run out of milk, and you got to pull in and get some of that stuff, or do vertical replenishment while you're at sea. But right off the coast of Australia, we hit 35-foot seas in 1983. There was a big storm, and I don't remember the name of it. But when you hit 35-foot seas on an aircraft carrier, because people ask me this all the time, do you feel anything when you're out there? And it's like, for the most part, no. But when you hit 35-foot seas, you feel it. We actually lost a sailor. We didn't lose him overboard, but he got hit by a wave, and it killed him during that time of getting through this storm. And it was a storm that I guess we couldn't outrun, from what I remember. We just got in it. Sometimes I wonder if the Navy gets in a storm just to see how they can handle it. So if it does happen, it's like, let's just go around this thing and let's not try to get too close to it. But yeah, I do. That was quite a memorable moment when we hit 35-foot seas. Something that I'll never forget.
And you were talking about the 18,000 meals a day that were prepared. That aircraft carrier had a lot of people on it, didn't it?
6,000 crew, about 70, between 65 and 70 aircraft on a Nimitz class carrier.
That's a lot of people, a lot of aircraft, a lot of moving parts.
That is. You got 3 hangar bays inside that actually have doors where you can close it off, and you can have, let me see, it was 3 hangar bays. So you could, and you had 4 elevators, if I remember right. And this picture right here, that's inside the hangar bay looking out at the elevator. The elevator is up, and that's why you can, well, if it was down, I know it's up. I can't explain that, but we're looking out at another carrier. But that's your elevator, and that would come down, and you could wheel your aircraft either out of that hangar bay onto the elevator. And I think you could put 1 or 2. I know you could put 1, of course. I think you could put 2 at a time on the elevator, if I remember right, and then bring it up to the flight deck, or take planes off the flight deck and bring them down and put them in the hangar bay. And these guys would do all of the mechanical stuff down in those hangar bays. And I think we could fit 3, 4, maybe 5 aircraft in each hangar bay. So you could fit about 15 aircraft down inside the ship.
And then you still had room for 6,000 people.
Yeah, there was plenty of room in that hangar bay. Even when there was airplanes in it, you could go down in there and run around. Or if they weren't doing flight ops, you could go up on the flight deck and run around a couple of times. I think it's 3 football fields is the area of the flight deck. And guys, after flight ops were over late at night or even during the day, guys would go out there and run around. I think maybe 4 times around was a mile or something. I can't remember. It was so long ago, but yeah, you could get your exercise. And we used to have picnics up there. We call them steel beach picnics while we were at sea. And the guys would go up there and put on the suntan lotion, and we'd have barbecue, and we'd have some boxing smokers where guys would sign up to box each other and just have a good time, or maybe have a live band up there. Because you've got, out of 6,000 men on a carrier, you got guys from all walks of life.
And you'd said something earlier about in that whenever the swells were so big and you had those 35-foot way or swells, that somebody did get killed. There were probably some other accidents that happened while you were deployed, weren't there?
Well, we never really, we had some other accidents with the 35-foot seas. Real quick, we lost a lot of printers and things that weren't tied down, and there was a lot of rolling around on the ship. As far as other incidents on our ship on the world cruise, we actually lost five sailors on that 8-month cruise. It was an 8-month around the world deployment, and we lost 2 pilots in the Mediterranean. We had an F-14 that went down, and we stayed there for about a week, just searching, and we didn't really find anything. We found a life jacket, and I don't know if it was part of the tail of the aircraft, and that's it. And we just couldn't stay there any longer. So we lost those 2 pilots, and then we lost a couple of other guys, and I can't remember exactly what happened to them. And then when we lost that one, his name was I think his name was Cyrus, and I can't remember where he was from, but he's the gentleman that got hit by the wave, and it killed him. He didn't get washed overboard or anything, but so we lost 5. Unfortunately, lost 5 sailors on that 8-month deployment. So that does happen.
And so you were in the Navy for 7 years.
Yeah.
And then you got out, and here's a picture. Is this before this was?
So yeah. So I got out of the Navy, and I was out for about a year and a half. During that year and a half, I signed up for the Naval Reserves up in Chicago, where I was living at the time. And I was in for a short time, and I ended up going through a divorce, unfortunately. And I went back to Maine for a little bit, hung out. I was 29 years old. I said, man, you know what? Here I am at home in my basement, living the way I did when I was in high school. What am I doing? You know, I've got some kids from my divorce. I got to get out. I got to get some work. And I went down one day, and I was working with a brick mason at the time, and that was not going very well. That was some hard work being a mason tender. So one day at lunch, I went down and talked to the Navy recruiter, and I said, can I please get back in the Navy? And by golly, he said, yep, you're good to go. What do you want to do? You know, well, I want to go back in as a weatherman, because, you know, that's what I did. And they gave me a choice of the battleship Wisconsin, Misawa, Japan, or Guam, and I took Guam. This picture is in Guam, and that's me making E5, or it might be good conduct medal, I'm not sure, and that's my captain. So yeah, I went to Guam, and I was over in Guam for 6 years tracking typhoons.
My goodness, that's a long time to be stationed in one place.
It's a 2-year tour. I extended, and extended because, 1, I like history, and I like hiking through the jungles. 2, I met my wife there, and we got married, and it was just a great place to be. And so I extended, and the Navy didn't have a problem with that, because it was cheaper to leave me there than it was to pick me up and move me somewhere else. So I extended 4 times on top of my 2-year tour. So I ended up doing 6 years there.
And did you do some of the cave exploration there? They had caves there?
In 1994, I got involved with the 50th anniversary of the liberation of Guam. And back then we had 10 million World War II veterans scattered around the United States. Unbelievable amount, ungodly amount. And so each unit that was there at the naval base, and of course I worked up on Nimitz Hill at the Naval Oceanography Command Center / Joint Typhoon Warning Center, and the 2-star admiral was up there also. So it was ComNav Mars headquarters, and that's where the Joint Typhoon Warning Center was. And when that 1994 commemoration came around, or the celebration for the liberation of Guam, for June 1944, they came to each unit and said, hey, you got anybody that can volunteer? And my master chief that was there said, I got a guy that likes history here. You can take him. So off I went for 3 months, and all I did was put on civilian clothes every morning and get my machete out and go and whack my way through the jungle, and got quite involved with a dental captain that was kind of heading all of this off. And we actually built a museum there from an old listening post that we had. And I hiked the jungles and found artifacts. The Navy gave me about $10,000 to spend. So we went, a friend of mine and myself went through Shotgun News and ordered uniforms and swords and M6, not MC, I'm sorry, Garans, M1 Garans, and we built a museum over there. And when the 3rd Marine Division came back, we had something to show them. And we had over 2,000 Marines come back from the 3rd Marine Division to visit Guam.
So your work with World War II veterans goes way back.
Yeah, it goes back to Guam. I was always interested in World War II and all wars as growing up as a young boy. But yeah, once I got to Guam and started hiking the jungles, and people told me when I got there, you won't find anything here. Everything's gone. Rick, I can't tell you how much stuff I found on that island. I found a lot of stuff, Japanese and American. Found a canteen one time engraved with the gentleman's name, and we tracked down his family. He was killed in action, was a 3rd Marine, killed in action on Guam shortly after the invasion, and we sent that canteen back home to the family that was still surviving, to surviving members of his family, and found a set of dog tags and did the same thing.
My goodness.
Yeah. That's something I'll never forget.
History right there where you lived, and right in the palm of your hand.
Yeah. We had a beautiful museum that we put there on the naval base, and we fought and fought and fought after the liberation, the commemoration of the liberation, to keep that. But the Navy really wasn't interested in having people come through the gate and get a pass to go to this museum that we had built. And eventually it kind of got dismantled. All the artifacts and everything that we had went to the National Park Service over there in Guam, and they've got all that stuff today. So.
Have you been back to Guam?
I have not been back. Al Chatwin, a roll call member who was on Guam in 1940, probably the end of 44, 45, and right into 46, I would imagine, went back last year, and I wish that I could have gone back with him, because I could have given him a good tour.
And he was about 98 then, or 97?
Yes, yeah. Yep, I was there back after the island was already taken. That was considered, Guam was the supermarket of the Pacific. Everything that was used to push on to Japan, which we thought we were going to invade, came off that island. They built that island up in a short amount of time. There were more Quonset huts there than you can imagine. And that port, Apra Harbor, was a major port. You had 3 or 4 flat tops out there, aircraft carriers, and every other kind of ship that you can think of. That was the supermarket of the Pacific, and that was Nimitz's headquarters.
Maybe whenever you're 96, 97 years old, maybe you can go back like Al did.
I could go back tomorrow, and I could still give somebody a tour and show them all the historical sites. And all the hiking that I did. I actually, during the 94 commemoration, I actually, with my machete, blazed a trail up on Nimitz Hill, all to about 20 different historical sites that I researched. And I had some of the Seabees on the island make me signs, and we posted signs in there, and we made a nice little trail for people that came back for that commemoration of the liberation of Guam, so that they could walk through there and see all of these different sites.
Just think how many memories those guys had, that they could go back to the places they had been.
Yeah. I had a friend there, Jack Eddy. He was with the 3rd Marine Division. He got the Silver Star. He was living on Guam. After the war, he got injured pretty bad and went back to, I can't remember where he was from, but he went back, and around 1971, he decided to move back to Guam because he had lost a lot of friends there. And he got his Silver Star on Nimitz Hill, going up the hill after the Marines landed on the beach. He was with a gentleman by the name of Lewis Wilson. Lewis Wilson was a Medal of Honor recipient and got his Medal of Honor on Guam. I met Lewis when he came there years ago. Lewis went on to become the commandant of the Marine Corps in the 70s. But he came back in 1994, and the admiral that was there at the time, Admiral Christensen, invited me up and to meet Lewis Wilson, and we stood out on the deck on the top of on the roof of the building where we were at, and he showed me, pointed out all the areas and everything, and when he came up that what's called Fonte Ridge back then, he was with Jack Eddy. They were good friends. Jack moved back to the island in 71 because a lot of his friends had died there, and I knew Jack. I picked him up a couple of different times on Guam, and we would go up there on Nimitz Hill, and he would show me and tell me all about what he did when he landed there in 1944. So it was quite an interesting. I really hated to leave Guam. I kind of wish I was still back there now. I liked the island life. I liked the locals. I had a good time. The history was great.
And maybe one day you can go back and you can take a group with you and do some tours.
I would love to do that. We'll see.
You need to do that. Well, you were in the Navy in Guam, and then you got out again. Correct?
I got out, stayed there on Guam for another 2 years as a civilian working for a local long-distance phone company when the internet was brand new, and I was going around to all the hotels owned by the Japanese and hooking up email and showing them, because nobody heard of email and nobody knew about the World Wide Web, and the people, there were no Pentium chips out yet, so the computers were slow, and we were handshaking with the modems, all the squeaky noise and 2400 baud modem. When they went to like a 36K, I think it was 36.4 or whatever K modem, made by US Robotics. We got that, and that was like the latest and greatest, and that was fast. And
you were screaming then. I mean,
so yeah, that's what I did. I stayed there for 2 years, and then we left. My wife and I left, married her on Guam, and we left, and we went to Colorado Springs. And I was never, ever going to go back in the military again after I got out. I had 13 years and 4 days in when I got out, and decided to stay on Guam for another couple of years in the private sector. Once I moved to Colorado Springs, the military was far out of my mind, and I ended up getting in the computer field there. I lived up there for 8 years, worked in the computer field, worked for MCI Corporation, which was the second largest long distance phone company in the United States. Some of the older folks watching may remember that, MCI. And then there were AT&T was number one, and MCI was number two. Of course, they went under. And then I also worked for Oracle Corporation for about 8 years, troubleshooting software while I was in Colorado Springs.
And then somehow you happened to come to Fort Worth, Texas.
Yeah, I moved down here in 2005. I had a brother-in-law that passed away down in Killeen. He was a retired master sergeant. He passed away. I came down here to help my sister-in-law take care of all the burial and insurance and all that stuff that she didn't quite understand. I went back up to Colorado, and a couple of weeks later, one of my wife's sisters come up, picked her up, and said, "Come on, you're moving to Texas." So there I was, home alone in Colorado, and had to pack everything up and sell that house and move down here to Texas. And I came down here in 2005.
She's been here a while.
Been here for
20 years.
20 years. This is the longest I've ever lived in one place. I have more years in Texas than I have in Maine growing up, because I left there when I was 19. So I lived there 19 years, and been in Texas for 21 years. And I'm probably not going to leave anytime soon, because my wife has two sisters close by here. And unless they want to move somewhere else, we ain't moving anywhere else. And they're not moving.
And then you went back into the Army, or you went into the Army.
When I moved down here in 2005, I had no job, didn't know what I was going to do. My wife talked me into joining the Army Reserves at age 45. So I said, I might be too old.
Never too old.
They told me I was too old, but what they did is they subtracted 13 years of active duty Navy from my age, and that put me at 32. The cutoff was 42 in 2005. So I was on my way to Fort Knox for a little bit of boot camp. Not a whole boot camp, but enough to hurt a 45-year-old.
I think it'd be tough to go through boot camp at 45 if you had to do the full deal.
Yeah, it would. I was down there for boot camp's 9 weeks. We only had your prior service guys, and even the guys that went from blue to green, which was a program back then to have Navy guys come over and Air Force people come over into the Army, because the wars were going on. All these wars in the 2000s had just kind of fired up right around 2005, and they needed people, so everybody was signing up. And so I got in. I was 45 years old. We only had to do a 4-week training. What they did is they took that 9 weeks and they kind of combined it all together, and they did this fast-paced 4-week boot camp, and it included everything that you get in the 9 weeks, but they just jammed it all in together, and they figured because we were in the military already that we could handle it. And so, but I had a tough time, and I ended up being down there for about 7 weeks because I was overweight. I'd been smoking. I couldn't run. They wanted me to run a mile in 8 minutes when I got there, and it took me 10 to do it. And it's like, wow, this is not going very well. I called my wife and I said, what did you talk me into? But I made it. I made it out of there, Rick, in the 7 weeks. Came back to Fort Worth, and then I got hired on with the railroad at the same time. So somebody was looking over me and taking care of me.
And that was Burlington Northern Santa Fe, correct?
Yes. I got hired on. My neighbor across the street was a retired Navy chief who thought he was a Marine because he was a hospital corpsman and was with the Marine unit for about 12 years. I went over there, and he was the first guy I met when I got to Texas. He was from Texas, from out in Tyler. And he said, the railroad's hiring. And so we went down. I didn't think we'd ever get hired because it was like a post office job where you had to wait for somebody to pass away before you could get hired. And I thought the same, but no, they were doing a big hiring deal with the railroad back then because all the old heads were leaving. They were all retiring after being out there for 40 years. And by golly, I got hired on the railroad. So now I'm in the Army Reserve, and I'm working for Burlington Northern Santa Fe as a conductor, making pretty good money. And it's like, wow, Texas is looking pretty good.
And you were able to not only retire from Burlington Northern Santa Fe, but then you were able to retire from the reserves.
I had 26 years altogether. I got pretty much a retirement check like a retired active duty guy, because I had 13 years active duty with the Navy, and then I had 13 years Army Reserves, and that all calculated up to be a pretty darn good retirement check. I made E7. I went in as an E5 as a sergeant. While I was at Fort Knox, they said, we'll give you your rank back. Made me a sergeant. And then I was able to make staff sergeant a couple of years later. And then about 2 or 3 years after that, I made E7 and retired as an E7 with the Army Reserves. I was with a unit out at White Settlement, the 90th Aviation Support Battalion.
Okay. And somewhere along the way, probably about 2015 or 16, you found a group called Roll Call. Was it about 2015 or 16?
I did. So I'm in the Army, and I never got deployed. I was lucky. Somebody was maybe watching over me. There's a reason behind everything that goes on this planet. But right around 2017, I got a text from somebody on Facebook by the name of Kelly Martin. And she found out that I was a veteran, and she found out that I was interested in Roll Call. Somebody had told me about Roll Call at my Army unit. A gentleman that was from out in Granbury. He said, I got this organization that's kind of new, Roll Call. You might be interested in this, because I had done military displays out at my old Army unit. So they knew I was a history buff. And so I got a call from Kelly one night, a text from her asking me if I wanted to come to Roll Call and see what it was all about. So February 2017, I went to my first luncheon.
It kind of changed your life, didn't it?
It did. And that's back when we had a lot of the World War II guys left that were still here. R.V. Bergen, Cliff, Stump, and Carmen Giese and Fisk Hanley and all those guys. I went to the first luncheon, and probably about 2 months after that, Kelly asked me if I wanted to be on the board. And so I said, sure. And I've been on the board ever since.
And you created the museum, and I mean, that's a remarkable museum. But you met
Yeah.
a lot of other interesting people. There's Lieutenant Colonel Ellen West.
Yeah.
He was one of our speakers, and there you are.
I'm at Birdville I'm at Birdville ISD getting an award there. I like that picture because it shows me in my uniform, not so much bragging on the award I got, but with Birdville for about 4 or 5 years now, I've been going out there every Veterans Day and setting up displays in their cafeteria for the kids. And then as the kids come in to eat lunch, I'll go in that one day. I leave the display up for about a week, and then I would go into the cafeteria, and every 200 kids that would come in to eat, I'd sit and get up there and talk to them a little bit while they're eating lunch. So they put me in for an award, which was really nice of them, and that's where that picture was taken.
And that's part of roll call.
Yep.
It's not just about veterans getting together to eat lunch. It's about teaching others about our veterans and about military service, and really a love for our country.
Sure. Yeah. So when we have the luncheons, that's when all the veterans get together, and that's a big part of roll call. But you're right. To go out into the community, a lot of the kids today, they have no idea about past. They have some of them not sure about the future. It would be tough growing up today. But yes, roll call we go to schools. We like to set up. You mentioned the museum, the mobile museum. That was a great idea at the time. It's still a good idea, but I've decided after setting that up for for the last year or so, that to be out in the hot and be out in the rain or be out in the humidity, I'm more moving towards setting things up inside. And so I'll go to schools and set things up, and that way more kids can see more instead of trying to get people to come up through a museum. And then, so we're still doing that, and we're still setting up at roll call. It's just a little bit different, but I've got a lot of things to be able to show people if they're interested. So we do get out in the community.
A lot of interesting things, because a lot of the things that roll call has are from our members that we have donated to the museum.
Yeah, we do have some items. I had a pretty large collection that I started with, and I've been adding on to it. And I do have things that have been donated by some of our members or former members or people that have since passed away. So it's nice to be able to keep their story alive and be able to go out in the community and share that story with other people, either while that person is still alive or keeping their story alive after they pass. And I'm surprised there's a lot of kids that are interested, but they've just never been exposed to it. Right. So they need to be exposed, and then you'll find the ones that are interested. So,
and another thing you do, you get the person that's going to say the Pledge of Allegiance, sing the national anthem, and then you get the honor guard. And most of the time, the honor guard is either a troop like the Scouts or junior ROTC. And so they get exposed because most of those groups come in, they present the colors, and then after they present the colors, they help serve the lunches. So it's kind of a great way to get exposed to a lot of great Americans.
Yeah, and it's good to have these young kids from the different ISDs that are with the JROTC groups to come out, because sometimes they know what they're doing and they know what it means to do what they do with a color guard. But sometimes they don't know much about the history, and I always talk to them when they come in. I'll either get I might get Civil Air Patrol, or I might get the Marine unit that's with the Texas, the International Leadership of Texas, or I might get an Army unit or a Navy unit from another ISD. But a lot of times they don't really know. And when they come in and I go back and talk to them and kind of give them the rundown of what they're going to be doing and how the opening ceremony goes, I'll tell them there's a lot of history sitting out in that room. So feel free when you're done presenting the colors to go sit with them, help serve, sit down, eat lunch, take your time. Don't run right back to school if you can help it. I'm sure a lot of them would rather stay there anyway.
Absolutely.
I know I like to get out of school when I was younger for anything that you could get out of school for. But have them kind of hang out with us and get a feel for for what's in the room, because a lot of them they don't realize who's sitting out there.
And, if schools or individual groups or things want to get involved with roll call, they can go to roll-call.org, and there's some information
They can
on our website.
Yeah, and I try to change up the color. I try to change up the color guards and the singers and each month, so that it gives everybody a chance that would like to do something like that, and it kind of changes it up for our audience to have an Air Force, like the the Citizen Air Patrol guys, or have a Marine unit, or have an Army unit, or try to represent each service, so that the people out in the audience can appreciate it at the same time.
And those young people, they get staged and everything before they go in, and I always try to take individual shots of every one of them. Whether it's the person with the flag or their military flag or whatever. And so one day when we were at Willow Park, I was going down the line and taking the pictures of all the kids. They were lined up, and I get to one of them, and I was looking in my viewfinder. I think, that's my great nephew. I didn't even know he was doing that. So that was a real treat to be able to have him. And he came back several times at Willow Park. And now we were away from the place, Birchman Baptist Church. They have allowed us for years to have roll call. They were doing some renovations, so Willow Park Baptist Church was very gracious and let us be over there. And now we're back at Birchman.
Yeah.
And yesterday, the reservation line opened up for the roll call that is September the 26th.
Yeah.
And got a notification, you got a notification too, that the 480 places that we have,
all gone, all disappeared.
It's the hottest ticket in town, is what I say. And,
only took 10 hours to get it sold out. So people are going to be trying to jump the fence like they did at Woodstock to get in.
No. And it's kind of one of those things that's so popular, and we just can't have any more than about 480, 500 people at the maximum. And once a year we have it at NASJRB in April, and then we can have 700 or 800 people.
Sure. Yeah. I'll tell you, a lot of these men and women that come to roll call, that is the highlight of their month. They look forward to it. I'll say this, I almost wish we could do it twice a month, but there's a lot of work involved in that.
There's a lot of work, and it takes a lot of funds to feed that many people.
It does. And, I say this, and I say this to some people. I say, there's groups out there, and this is not, it's not a bad thing, but there's groups out there that all year long, they plan for a gala with 500 people, and they plan all year long. They're working on this so they can pull it off successfully. Well, by golly, we do it every month at roll call. And I want to, before I forget, I want to thank all the roll call board members, Judy, Jeff and Kim Hingen, Steve Gross, Mary, Dana. We've all been at this for a long time, and we've made it successful, and we can't do it unless we're all together. Let me see, did I miss anybody? I think I got everybody.
You got the chaplain.
Well, we got Chaplain Kreider. Well, I hope he's not watching. Well, I kind of hope he is watching, but yeah, I forgot the chaplain. And that was a kind of an idea that I thought about. He posed the question. He said, everybody's got a chaplain. Football teams have got it. Basketball teams have got it. The NASCAR's got, you need one at roll call. And I never really thought about that. And yes, we do have Chaplain Kreider on board now. So,
but I had the honor of being on the board for a while. And yeah, it's a lot of work. Because it's like a 24/7 involvement, because it's not only the luncheon, but it's keeping up with the veterans. It's taking veterans to different organizations, and there is a tremendous amount of work that the board does. And like you say, when you're all working together, you're all pulling that wagon together, it becomes very, very successful.
Absolutely. I was just at Flower Mound Senior Center last Friday. Went up there, brought up a uniform for each branch, set them up. I had all 5 to include the Coast Guard. I don't have any Space Force yet. Went out and talked to a bunch of veterans, mostly from Vietnam. Put on my uniform because I like to wear my uniform, and I can do it at military events that are military related, and I fit in it now. Now that I lost a bunch of weight. And it was fun to go up there. And that's one of the things that we do. We'll go out and we'll talk to veterans and visit them. And I don't know, take them out to lunch when there's not a luncheon. Or, yes, like you said, take them to baseball games. I'm going to the Navy Ball here pretty soon. I imagine you're probably going to be there.
I
Coming up in October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But another thing you do, too, at Black Rifle Coffee Company, up there off of Heritage Trace, every Saturday, there's a group meets, probably 14, 16 people meet weekly up there.
Yeah.
What time? About 10 or 11?
So my friend Marquita Foxworth and Selena Ward, and I don't know if you've ever met Selena and Gerald. Sure. They kind of started that group, and it's pretty successful. And we're up there every Saturday between 11 and 12:30. We'll buy your coffee. Come on in. Bring the wife. Bring your kids, if you want. But yeah, we get about 15 to 20. We've had as many as 25 or 30.
That's good.
And Don Graves is usually up there with us. He's kind of a celebrity.
Lives right around the corner.
And he's right around the corner, and he's usually there. And there's somebody that wants to talk to him or somebody that doesn't know about him. And then when they discover who it is and how old he is, then they're, wow, a lot of people just don't know that there's still some World War II guys left around, and they're mostly 100 years old now. Yep. So we're there.
That's a good place to come to meet Don Graves if you want to meet Don Graves, because he's usually there.
Absolutely. And then we got a group that meets down at Benbrook. So, I don't know. There's a Black Rifle over in North Richland Hills. Maybe we'll get something going over there, and just a place for people to meet, because roll calls once a month, but it's always nice to meet up in between roll call,
Absolutely.
And so
sometimes we go, to Fred's over here on the west side, or to another restaurant, and then after roll call meeting on that Friday, a group goes up to Boomer Jack's in Lake Worth. So there's a lot of other things going on. So
yeah, it's a great organization, and being part of it is a lot of fun, and it's an honor, and I enjoy it now that I'm fully retired, and I can just do pretty much whatever I want. And I like volunteering and doing different things in the community. So it's perfect for me, and it's great for the guys that are members, and the men and women that are members. It's great for them, and it's good for them too.
Absolutely. And if you go to roll-call.org, there's a place on that website where you can sign up. And whenever you sign up, it's not like we're going to sell your information or anything. It's just so we can send you a newsletter, because whenever the newsletter comes out every month, it has the reservation page to where you can try to make reservations. We may have to start having a lottery or something so everybody could get there. So
yeah, and we won't ever bother anybody. You sign up. There's no membership fee. There's nothing. We're going to send you an email and let you know when the luncheons come up to remind you if you want to attend. You're not required to every month. You can come one month, and if you got something going on next month, we're pretty lax. I mean, we're pretty much stress-free organization.
Absolutely.
Come when you'd like. And if you ever want to share your story, we would never pressure anybody into sharing a story. But if you want to share your story, get a hold of one of us, and we'll let you get up on stage and talk about what you've done, because like Mary always says, everybody has a story.
That's right.
So,
and there's a lot of things coming up. We've got the Joaquin, he's a veterans officer for the city of Fort Worth, and the city of Fort Worth Air Power Foundation and Next Up. We're having an employment workshop, and that's September the 26th, the same day as roll call. So if you didn't get the chance to go to make reservations for roll call, here's someplace else you can go. It's free. It's 10 to 2 down at Will Rogers in the down by where they have the stock show and rodeo. And
Oh,
then out at Baird, Texas, out in the big country, just east of Abilene, the Air Power Foundation, there's going to be a benefit out there called the Big Bash, Big Time Bash. A lot of bands out there, and the proceeds are going to go to the Air Power Foundation. That's October 18th. You can go to the Air Power Foundation's website and find out more about the Big Bash. And then Skyball, it's coming up October the 25th, and it's going to be at Globe Life Field. You can get more information about the Skyball. And then there's going to be a motorcycle ride to remember the 22 veterans that take their life. And this is the proceeds are going to go to the Air Power Foundation. And this is November the 8th. Well, then November the 10th is the Marine Corps birthday. And everybody knows that because the Marines start talking about it right after. For November the 10th this year, they'll be talking about November the 10th, 2026, as soon as the clock strikes midnight. Yeah. On the next day is Veterans Day, November 11th. There's still time to, if you've got a group and you want to enter the Veterans Day Parade, I'm told it's going to be downtown Fort Worth again and not just down Forest Park Boulevard. So for roll call, if you'd like to sponsor a veteran, $20 a month, you could go here, sponsor a veteran. This helps cover the cost of a veteran's lunch, and it's just a great way to help our veterans. And then Mary and I would like for you to follow us, Hometown Heroes podcast on YouTube. So there's just a lot of opportunities, and you can meet great people like Roy and learn a lot of stuff about history.
Yeah, we got a busy time of the year coming up with the holidays, with Halloween, with Thanksgiving and New Year and Christmas and Veterans Day and the Marine Corps birthday. I mean, just a lot of stuff going on, and it gets real busy this time of the year. We'll be roll call. I think we're going to be at Wayside Middle School again this year. And so we'll be setting up some displays out there, and we'll have some people come out and speak to the kids there. They've been really good about inviting us. And one last thing before we go, because I know we got to go here pretty quick. For everybody watching or anybody out there that's not a veteran, and even if you are a veteran, when you see a veteran, and you can usually see them because they usually wear a hat with some yellow writing on it, you can spot them a mile away. Go up and thank them, because that goes a long way with some of these guys.
And a lot of times veterans wear those hats so they can get identified and identify other veterans.
Exactly. And I'd like to say men and women. So the women don't always wear the hats, but sometimes you can tell, or there's something, or they may speak up and say, well, I'm a veteran too. So we got to remember for the women out there too, because there's a lot of men and women that have been in the military.
Or if you see a group of people trying to do stuff and you hear a woman over there shouting orders and everything, it could be somebody like Mary that's your first sergeant, and you think, that sounds like a first sergeant. And then you find out, she is the first sergeant.
There you go. Yeah, because at our coffee meetups, we have about four or five young ladies that come in and that have been in the military, and they're with their husband was in the military, and we're thinking, he was in the Army. We talked to him, and we find out that the wife was in the Navy. And it's like, you got to let us know that. But but anyway, it goes a long way to thank a veteran. That could make a Veterans Day.
Absolutely.
From one veteran to another, or from a civilian that's never been in the military to another veteran that can change the whole outlook of their day by thanking them for their service and letting them know you appreciate what they've done.
Absolutely. Roy, thank you so much for being on Hometown Heroes. I was looking back, and we did a group deal one time with several of the board members, maybe a couple of times that you were there. But I thought, we never have heard all of Roy's story. We still haven't heard all of Roy's stories, but we heard a chunk of them today, from being right there when the Carl Vinson was being built, to the sea trials, to a world tour, and then your time on Guam, then your time in civilian life, and your time in the Army, and then you found roll call. Yeah. And that's how we met. And it's been a great pleasure and honor to know you, because, Roy, you're a great American.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Rick. And I appreciate you having me on. And God bless everybody out there that's watching or that will watch us later on.
Well, just go visit roll-call.org for more information about roll call and how you can get involved as a veteran or as a sponsor or as a volunteer. So, Roy, thanks a lot for being here today. Mary should be with us next week if she's not traveling around the world.
Yeah, there you go. All righty.
We'll see you later.